Let's set up a kick-ass Docker server with Traefik, Authelia, bunch of different apps, and even a dashboard in just about an hour using Deployrr version 5. Hey there, Geek Army, Anand here. If you do not know what Deployrr is, then be sure to check out my introductory video on it. This video is meant to be a detailed guide on how to use Deployrr to its full potential. We're going to start from a fresh, clean Ubuntu server and build a robust Docker home server in just about an hour. But before we begin, be sure to check out the pinned comment below to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Deployrr and the release of version 5, which is the biggest update ever. I'm running some promotions. Each month, from my subscribers who comment below, I will pick random, or actually two random winners in October and November and give away free licenses. So be sure to subscribe and comment below to put your name into the hat. If you already plan to support me by purchasing a license, then be sure to use this code to get 15% off. And not only that, I will pick a random winner each month again in October and November and refund your order so you get it for free. Let's jump in and see how to use Deployrr version 5. Deployrr was previously called Auto Traefik if you didn't know, but it does a lot more than Traefik, so I renamed it to Deployrr. There is a playlist on how to use Auto Traefik, as you can see right there. A lot has changed since then, but the core of it still remains the same. For today, I created an unprivileged LXC on my proxmox home server. If you don't know how to run Docker on an unprivileged LXC on a proxmox server, go back and watch my video on how to do that. I also passed through the graphics device node from the proxmox host into the LXC container, also the network device node from the proxmox host machine into the LXC container. If you're running a virtual machine, this is not an issue, but be sure to pass through your graphics card. If you're running a bare bones Ubuntu server, then none of these things are a problem. The host resources should be available for Docker to use. So let's get started. I am already SSH'd into this LXC container. I'm logged in as root because I do not have a normal user yet. So let's get started with that one first. So if you head over to my website right here under blog and Ultimate Docker Server, the first one preparing the OS, that's what we're going to do. If you scroll down below, you're going to see some steps that you can follow to get started. The first one will obviously be creating the user, as you can see right here. So we're going to use these commands to create the user. Okay, sudo add user Anand and sudo add user. Okay, let's start one by one. Sudo add user Anand. Now that's done. We're gonna say Anand, and Anand, it's not very strong, but that's okay. I'm going to do that and it's done. Okay, so the next one, we have to add the normal user to the sudo group. So that's what we're going to do with this command. So copy that one and then paste right here. Now that part is done as well. Next, we'll have to exit out and then SSH back in as the normal user. I'm going to do that right now. Okay, I am now logged in as myself. I'm ready to get started with Deployrr. Let's go. So let's head over to Deployrr GitHub repository. So right here, there are several branches right here. I'm in version 5 branch because it's in development. Once I push it, it's going to be in the main branch right here. So either in main branch or the development one. Scroll all the way down, copy this command to get Deployrr app. Let's head over here, paste it. This is going to download the Deployrr app. So if I do ls, you're going to see it. Let's run it using this command right here. Maybe I will increase the size so you can see it better. /deployrr and underscore v55.0 app. Okay, it's good that this error is happening. If you see this happen, then you will have to make the app executable. So if I do ls-al, you can see there is no executable permissions on those. So let's do that. Sudo chmod +x Deployrr app, and now let me type in my password, and now if I do ls-al, you're going to see that it is executable. So in fact, I think this is explained in the repository as well. Okay, so let's execute it right now. Deployrr.app, there you go. The first time it runs, it's going to download some packages, install it because those are required. Here is the main screen of Deployrr. You can see it's still in beta, so there might be some bugs, but by the time you watch this video, it should be a full release and you won't see this message. In fact, I'm using the beta version today, so we're going to really test it to see if it works without any issues. There's a message on how you can get started there, how to use. Feel free to read through it. It's in the About menu, but we're going to follow the steps in order today. First, we're going to start with prerequisites. Prerequisites is free for anyone to use. You do not need to purchase Deployrr. You do not need to register on my website. You can use this to automate a lot of different steps and save some time while you follow the guides on my website. All right, let's get started with prerequisites. It says it's not done, so we're going to start with this one. First, we're going to start with disclaimer. An automated script can have unintended consequences. I do go through a lot of effort to test it, but maybe something can go wrong. Maybe you use the script as it is not intended. Something can happen, so be sure to read the disclaimer, understand, plus also read my guide so you know what the script is actually doing in the background. Okay, so let's acknowledge that we've read this disclaimer. We're ready to go to the next step. Now, packages. We do need to install some basic packages. So let's hit that one and let it install all the packages now. This is also going to install Docker, I believe. So you don't need to go through and install Docker before you get started. Some people have done it. It's not a big deal, but as I said, I designed the script to start from a clean system. So that's done. Next, we're going to enter the username. Now, Deployrr will already give you the username that you're running the script as, Anand, right here. So I'm just going to accept that one and say, okay. We are going to start with a local setup. Now, what is a local setup? You can just press enter. Now this is going to toggle to a hybrid mode. So in hybrid mode, some or all of the apps can be exposed to the internet via reverse proxy. Now before Deployrr version 5, hybrid mode was the default and the only possible mode, meaning you could not install apps locally. All apps were exposed to the internet by default because traffic was a requirement. Now, so that's what hybrid mode is. So you do need a domain name, Deployrr Plus or Pro license, reverse proxy. For now, this is Traefik, port forwarding on your router or gateway to the Docker host, Cloudflare for DNS. You can have your domain registered with any registrar, but you could still use Cloudflare for free for your DNS records, and this is required for Traefik to work using Deployrr. Okay, and then finally some A record and DNS CNAME records for Traefik to do the DNS validation. So those are the requirements for hybrid mode, but we're going to start with local mode first. So I'm going to toggle it one more time. Here you go. In local mode, apps are exposed on the internal network only. No reverse proxy is needed. No domain name is needed. No port forward needed. Cloudflare DNS records are also not needed. Now, this is included in Basic, Plus, and Pro versions. If you have a multi-server setup, then you could have one main Traefik instance in hybrid mode. Then you could have another Docker host in local mode with all the different apps and use the main Traefik instance and put all of those apps behind Traefik if you prefer to do it that way. Let's hit OK and proceed to the next step. We're going to set up a Docker folder now. So I'm going to hit this one and read through the description of what this is and all of that stuff. There's also a link to the article on my website that talks about how I set up my Docker folder structure. Be sure to read through that. What Deployrr does is exactly what is described in my guide and vice versa. So let's click OK and we're going to create it. Now you could browse and select. You can see the instructions right there, tab and arrows and spacebar. But I'm just going to type the path right here. I'm going to say home/on/docker. This is where I usually like to keep my Docker folder. All the apps and app data will be right here. So let me confirm that and say yes, and that's done. The next step is we define the backup folder. Here you will see some recommendations once again. I'm going to do the exact same thing what I did last time. So Anand/Docker backups. This is where all the backups that you create using Deployrr will be stored. Okay, so let's confirm that, say yes, and it's done. Next, we're going to use the environment option to set up our environment automatically. Once again, this is a great complement to my written guides on my website, and it's for free, and you're going to see what happens right now. So I'm going to click enter. All the files, folders, and permissions, everything that's needed for Deployrr to work or your Docker home server to work is set up automatically. So let's pick the time zone. I am in Europe and Zurich right there. Deploy or your Docker environment should be done setting up. Okay, let's press enter, and that's done. It was that easy. The next one is we need the IP of the server. I do not know this yet, so I'm going to press Control C and exit out of the script, and I'm going to type in IP and A. You're going to see my IP address right here, my local IP address 192.168.1.220. So we're going to use that. So let's run a Deployrr one more time and go back to the prerequisites menu and enter that right here 192.168.1.220. So there you go, enter and save that. That part is done. Now we are in local mode, so a domain is not required at this point. At some point you want to expose your apps, you will have to come back here and provide a domain name. So for now, let's leave that be. Okay, so let's run system checks, and it should check for some basic things, and then if everything passes, then you should be done with this step. So I believe Docker is not installed. This is where Docker gets installed. So it's adding Docker repository and installing Docker. When this is done, we'll come back and continue. Notice that it's installing Docker Community Edition and Docker Compose plugin. If you didn't know, there was a time where Docker had to be installed and Docker Compose had to be installed separately. Now, newer versions of Docker include both Docker and Docker Compose in them. So this was done, all systems passed. So let's go here, system checks. Well, we went through all of that stuff and it still says not done. Sometimes there's a bug. It appears that I have to exit out of the script and then rerun the script. Then prerequisite shows that it's done. So at some point I'll fix it. It's minor. It's not going to stop you from what you need to do. So just exit out of the script and come back in and it should say done. So at this point, all of the requirements are done and you're ready to get started with setting up the next part of the Deployrr script. All right, you can see that the prerequisites are now done. Now this would be a good time to go ahead into the about menu and verify your licenses. So because anything below the prerequisite menu requires a license. So let's go into the about menu right here, and you can see some recommended usage steps. If you want to set up a local mode, these are the steps that you need to follow in order. If you want to set up a hybrid mode, then these are the steps that you need to follow in order. Right next to that is the verify option. When you verify your account, you will have to set up a 6-digit PIN, and if you forget that, there is an option to reset your PIN by email. So you can use that as well. And then there's licenses option, which will explain to you all the different license types and what they include and what they don't include. There is more. There is a link to the Deployrr product page, which also explains everything in a lot more detail. Okay. Then there's change log. You can see all the changes that has been done with Deployrr. In fact, you can see all the way from version 1, which was an initial release in September 2023, to all the way right now. There has been a ton of work that has been done in the last 1 year. I've spent thousands of hours, probably, maybe it's too much, but I think about at least 1,000 hours into that. Right now, we're in version 5. Okay, so let's press enter and go back. And if you need to reach me for support, here is where you would find that information and link to the Discord server. Right now, let's go in here and verify our license. So today I'm going to be using the simplehomelab.com domain name, but for a local mode, you don't need to put in a domain name. So we'll just leave it be like that. Or actually, you know what? I am eventually going to set up traffic. So I'm going to use this domain. You can leave it blank if you're setting up a local mode. For the email account, I'm going to use Deployrr test 99 at smarthomebeginner.com. Obviously, this is a test account. I will delete it right after this video. Be sure to use the account that you used to register yourself on smarthomebeginner.com. So there you go. Now keep going, and it's going to ask you to create a pin. We're going to create a pin. I'm going to just type in 111111. It says pin was created successfully. Now you have to repeat that step to register yourself. So let's register ourselves. It should automatically pick up the domain name, then your email. Now it's going to ask you to type in your PIN to verify yourself. Let's do that. Previously set PIN found, so you will have to enter that. So 1111 to verify your account. There you go. Pro license verified successfully. So we now have Pro license. You don't really need Pro license for all of the steps, but Pro is the highest level. It gives you full access to Deployrr. Okay, now that I added a domain name, it says the prerequisites are not done for some reason. So let's go and see it. Okay, the reason the prerequisites are not done right now is because of the last option. Since when you went ahead and verified your license, there is an option to control the data that's sent to Deployrr server. Your domain name and email address are used to verify your license. If you don't have a domain name, obviously the domain name is optional, but at least your email is used to verify your license. So when you do that, some information is going through. But if you prefer to share more information than that, like your operating system and things like that, so I could focus my effort on developing Deployrr for the most used scenarios, then you could turn on a different data sharing mode. Right now it's set to minimum. The next level up is the normal, so you could set it to normal if you want to share data with me. Of course, it's not going to be published anywhere, or it's not going to be shared with anybody. So since we finished that, now if we go back in here, it should say that all the steps are done. So we're ready to get started with the system menu. So let's go into Rclone option. We're ready to get started with mounting our remote folders. Obviously, there are many different ways to mount your folders if your media is already not available in the system that you are working on. In my case, my media is on my Synology NAS. I'm going to mount that using the SMB protocol. So first, I'll have to install Rclone. So let's press Y and have Rclone installed. It should take just a few seconds. When it's done, you're ready to get started with the next step, which is to create the remote mount. So let's hit enter, press Y to continue. We're going to have to give a name for our remote folder. I'm going to call this 918, which is the model name of my Synology. You could call it NAS if you want, and then give an IP address for it, 1.254. This is the IP address of my NAS. And then now you have to give a username, Anand, and my password is Synology. Obviously, it's not that, obvious, but this is just a dummy account. So let's keep moving. It should be done in just a few seconds. So the remote mount is valid and it's working. So, but it hasn't been mounted yet, so we'll have to auto mount it. So let's go to the next option and proceed. You will have to pick a folder where the remote share is mounted. I like to mount mine under media, Rclone, and DS918 is the name of the mount. So I'm going to use that and confirm the folder. Next, you will also have to pick a folder for Rclone cache. So we're going to select that right now. So /media/Rclone/cache. This is how I like to do it. Obviously, feel free to pick what you like. Confirm that folder. Now that's done. Now the amount or the size of the cache depends on your situation. I use about, I think, 1 TB on my 2 TB hard drive that is on my proxmox. In this case, I'm just going to use 32 GB. Just that's good enough for now. So let's do that. Now, Deployrr is going to create all the required files and folders and try to auto mount my Synology NAS. Let's see if it works. Success. So SMB shares are now mounted. So if I press OK, it should say that it's been mounted to /media Rclone/DS918 as we wanted it. Next, we're gonna delay media apps. Okay, so if you are familiar with my GitHub repository or my Docker Compose files, you might have noticed profiles. Mm, and in fact, you know what, while we're at it, let's go to my GitHub right here, and we're gonna go, this is not my GitHub, this is Deployrr, but it's exactly the same. So let's go to Compose and open up one of them, and here you will see the profiles, right? So I use profiles to automate because I use Rclone mount. I want to make sure that the Rclone mount is mounted before the media apps like Jellyfin and Plex and Radar, they come up, because they're all dependent on Rclone. So I use a script to monitor this mount, and when it's active, then that script comes in and auto mount or auto starts Jellyfin, Plex, Radar, and all of that stuff. This is one way to do it. Of course, you could also use the Dockerized version of Rclone and then use depends on tag to start Radar, Plex, and all of that stuff after the Rclone Docker container starts. That's also possible, but this is the way I do it. And if I go back in here and say delay media apps, that's exactly what is going to be set up for you automatically. So let's do that. I want to do that right now. So here you will see the explanation of what I just said. So let's wait for this to be done. Okay, there you go. So the script has been installed. Now it will wait for Rclone mount when you reboot your system, and then start Jellyfin, Plex, and all the other stuff. Okay. So at any point, if you would like to refresh your Rclone cache, which is basically clearing it out, you can do that. And there's also an uninstall option for Rclone if you don't like it, or if you prefer a different way of mounting your remote folders. Now we have our remote folders mounted. The next step is to set up your folder. So let's go into folders right now. And the first thing is we're going to set up a downloads folder. Here you will see explanation of how it's nice to organize your stuff. It may or may not be possible in many cases, but where possible, I try to use Trash's recommendation, Trash Guides. If you're not familiar with it, check it out. They have recommendations, really nice recommendations for ARR apps. So let's go in here, and we're gonna pick the downloads folder. I don't have one, so I'm gonna create one right now. So home/on/downloads is where it's going to be. So I will confirm that and say yes. That's been said. You need at least one media folder. So I'm going to pick, I have two because I have two volumes on my Synology. So I'm going to set two media folders right now. So let's go and browse and select it. So I know mine is in media/rclone/ds918. And if I go in here, I should see data, and then I have a media folder here. So I'm going to confirm that as my first one. And then I'm going to set my second one right now the same way. Not home media/rclone/ds918/data2/media. Okay, so there you go. So my media folders are set. I can set a books folder if I want to install apps like Kavita or something like that. But if you know what, while we're here, let's do that as well. So media rclone/ds918/data/media/books. So I'm going to do that right now, and that's been set. Okay, so our folders are set. If you plan to use Nextcloud, you can set your Nextcloud data folder here as well. For now, I think you got the point, so we'll skip that. So we're done with our folders. Next, we'll have to pick up the GPU from our Docker host. Once again, go back and watch how you can pass through the graphics node from proxmox host to the LXC container. I have a video on it for a virtual machine. The method is a little bit more complex, and you probably have to refer to some online documentation. Bare bones, that should already be available. You don't need to worry about it. So when I hit enter, you get an explanation for why you need a graphics node. Then press enter. It's going to automatically check for any graphics nodes. In this case, one was found, so it's going to enable that one. The same way, we're going to enable network node. Once again, I have a video on it. Check it out. Let's press enter, and there you go. The network node was also found, and we have that set up. That's it. The one more thing what we're going to do to wrap up the system preparation is to install my bash aliases. If you do not know what those are commands that can simplify Docker, Linux, and Docker Compose commands. I use it every day. You don't really have to type long, lengthy commands to get things going. They make management of your Docker environment a breeze. So let's get that installed as well. So I'm going to do that right now, and you will see that my prompt might change after I'm done. So we're done with this step. Don't worry about the SMTP option right here. I have some plans for it. I haven't fully implemented it yet, but if you have an SMTP mail relay like Brevo or previously Sendinblue or Mailgun or something, you can enter the credentials here, and I have some plans for it in future. For now, you can ignore it. System preps, all of that is done. So if I press Control C right now and exit, then I'm going to exit and then come back in right now. Now you see my prompt color changed. So that means the bash aliases were installed properly, and now it's following the settings from my bash aliases. Okay, so let's restart Deployrr again and get back to the main menu. So we are done with the system part of it. So our system is set up and ready to go. So let's go back to our Docker setup. So we're actually just now getting ready to set up our Docker system. From now on, it's going to go real fast. All of the previous ones required a lot of explanation. Hopefully from now on, we don't need much more explanation. So if I go into Docker menu, the first thing we're going to do is set up socket proxy. What is socket proxy? I would recommend you to read my articles, but socket proxy will help you protect your Docker socket from apps or Docker images that have been compromised. So we're going to install socket proxy, proceed. And now typically you would install no for this question, but if you're using an unprivileged LXC container like I am, we're going to say yes, and then continue, because this determines some of the permissions. So that's why that question is being asked. The script is going to wait to see if socket proxy starts. If it starts, you should see a message very shortly. There you go. Socket proxy started, and we're ready to go. So if I go back in here, you're going to see socket proxy is running. We're ready to go. It does say it's a local app, meaning it's not exposed to the internet. Now, Deployrr dashboard. I am really excited about this one. It's a new addition in version 5, but we're not going to install that right now. Normally, I would say this would be a time that you install it before you keep moving. So if you're starting out, install it right now. The reason I'm not doing it right now is because I want to show you something later on. So for now, I'm going to skip this one. We're also going to skip the experimental features. If you want to see the usage of your Docker images, you can click that. You will see how much it's being used right now. It's only 16 megabytes, as you can see, but I guarantee you after a few months of tinkering, this is going to be several gigabytes. In my case, I've even seen, I don't know, 60, 70 gigabytes of space. So you will have to come back and clean up. Where do you clean up? Right there. The cleanup option will get rid of all the unwanted stuff. You can use it safely. It's not going to destroy your data or anything. Okay. Well, it's not going to destroy your data if you use Deployrr to do it and you know what you're doing. If you install custom apps, and depending on where the volumes are stored, you might have to be careful in using this option. But if you use Deployrr, all the data is stored in /home/ um, /docker. So that's where everything that will not be touched. So, okay. So we're done with the Docker options right now. The next step is we're actually ready to install some apps right now. So let's just go. This is new because until version 4, you had to have Traefik before moving forward. Now with the local mode, we are able to install apps right after Docker is ready. So let's go in here. You're going to see a huge list of apps. Let's start with one or two before we and see how it goes. Let's start with Adminer, for example. Adminer is used to manage some of the databases. So let's just go with that one. You're going to see how fast it is to install an app. In just a few seconds, everything is going to be set up, and you will see the details as to where the app is available. Of course, in this case, it shows you, and Deployrr tells you what port number that you could expose Adminer to on the host system. In this case, 8081 is being recommended. So I'm just going to say okay, because that port is free, already tested and available, and Deployrr will pull the Docker image for Adminer and install it. admin started, and you're going to see some closing messages. Be sure to read these closing messages. Many people skip those. Sometimes you will see default username and password displayed here, and then you go to the app and you don't know what the username and password are if you don't read it. Here's the link to access admin. So we're going to go over to my Chrome window and go to 192.168.1.220 and then 8081. Voila, there you go. Admin is ready to go. How many minutes did it take? Probably 2 minutes. We have one app that's done right now. Now we're going to go back to the Docker menu and we are going to install Deployrr dashboard. And you're going to see why. So let's go back in here and let's install Deployrr dashboard. So the same way, there are some explanations here, so feel free to read through it. It's just a dashboard that is automatically populated as you install apps or remove apps. It's based on home page, but everything is done automatically for you. You won't have to remember port numbers or URLs or things like that. So once again, you see a recommended port. I'm going to leave it at that, 3050, and then Deployrr is going to pull in the homepage image and create Deployrr dashboard for you. So let's wait for it to finish. And there you go, it's done. Once again, you have some closing messages right here. Deployrr dashboard is going to be available at 3050 port number. Deployrr dashboard or homepage does take a little bit of time to start, so we will have to wait a little bit. It may not work. In fact, you know what? I'm going to just go over here and change the port number 3050. And maybe it won't work because, as I said, it might take a little bit of time to get started. There you go. So now it's there. You can see right now we're on Deployrr dashboard. Okay, the real nice logo that was also introduced in version 5. Deployrr didn't have a logo before, so you can see Deployrr dashboard is running right now. It's a local app. It's exposed locally at this URL. It's not exposed remotely, so you don't see that. You see socket proxy on the right. What about admin? It was installed, but you don't see it here. Now, right now, this is a drawback. I just wanted to introduce an auto-populating dashboard. It's been introduced. At some point, I will see how I can bring in apps that were already installed before Deployrr dashboard onto the dashboard. Right now, this is a weakness, so you will have to install Deployrr dashboard first, or you will have to add it manually. Okay, so let's use this opportunity to actually uninstall admin and then reinstall it, and then you're going to see it here. Okay, so let's go back here. This would be a good time to show how to uninstall an app. So let's go over to the main menu. We're going to go to Tools, Stack Manager, and scroll all the way down to Delete. And then we're going to delete. There's two options, Safe Delete and Full Delete. Safe will leave your data intact. Full Delete will delete everything. When I say data, data for that specific app. So we're going to do a full delete and remove everything, all traces of admin. Do you want to make a backup before you proceed? I don't want to for now, at least. I'm just going to say you will see a list of apps. I'm going to pick number 1, admin, press enter, confirm that I want to delete it, and then everything will be deleted for you. So there won't be any traces of admin on your system. Then we're going to go back and reinstall it, and now this time you're going to see that admin will be automatically added to Deployrr dashboard. So let's go back now. Let's go back to install apps, and we are ready to install admin one more time. So now there is a slight delay between when an app is removed and it shows up here. Right now, if I exit out and then come back into the app and go to the menu, you should see that admin is not running. So this takes a little bit of time. It's not, I mean, okay, it's not really a bug. It's not going to stop you from doing what you need to do. I will find ways to improve this. So right now, as you can see, admin says it's not installed. So let's reinstall it right now. Admin, there you go. You will be asked for a port one more time. Maybe, I think. Let's wait. There you go. So let's confirm the port. Since the image is already on your system, it doesn't really have to download it, so it's going to be a lot faster than the first time. Okay, so Deployrr dashboard is already running. Here's the URL. Let's go over to our Deployrr dashboard right here. You can see admin was automatically added to the Deployrr dashboard. How awesome is that? I'm really excited about this one. This made my life so much more easier. I hope you guys like it. If you do, please leave a comment below. I did spend a lot of time just to get this part to work, at least fairly reliably, okay, for now. Okay, so let's go back now. Let's add one more app just for the sake of it. So we did adminer. Let's pick a simple one for now. Okay, so let's pick Baikal. Okay, so which is a utility calendar planning app. So let's do that. It says that, let's see, port number. Notice that it automatically went to 8082 because we installed a adminer in 8081. Deployrr smart enough to check for available ports before it proposes a port for you. So let's do that right now and give it some time to pull and install. And there you go. Not even 1 minute and we're there already. So let's go over to Deployrr dashboard and see right there. Our link is right here. Now the remote links are not populated yet. So once again, why there are no remote links? Because we don't have Traefik enabled yet or a reverse proxy enabled yet. When we have Traefik running, these links will also be auto populated. So this would be a good time to start working on Traefik. Okay, now let's start with Traefik. So let's go over to the reverse proxy menu. Once again, we're going to follow the steps in order. The exposure mode. This is new in version 5. Simple was the default method in all previous versions. Of course, it wasn't called simple at that point because simple basically is an exposure mode that exposes all of your apps both internally and externally outside your home network. Now with version 5, I introduced some advanced features where you will be able to select if you want to expose an app internally or externally or both, all of them using a fully qualified domain name using Traefik. Now, this is slightly different from the local mode that we just saw. We are going to be using the IP address and port. In that case, here you would still use, I don't know, radar.simplehomelab.com, but that URL will only work from inside your home network if you set the app to be available only internally. So that's what this is. Simple will expose everything everywhere. Of course, you do have the option to change it later on. As you can see here, manage exposure will do exactly that. If you want to change an app from internal to external or external to internal or both, you can always do that later on. You will also see very nicely a count of internally exposed apps, externally exposed apps, and apps that are exposed both internally and externally. As you can see, I've put in a lot of thought to give you some information right off the bat so you don't really have to dig for that information. So I think for now, well, you know what? I'm going to set it to advanced. You will see an explanation of what is required for the advanced mode. Advanced mode or even the simple mode requires port forwarding, but the way you port forward is slightly different for simple mode versus the advanced mode. For advanced mode, you will have to forward port number 80 from the internet to port number 81 on your Docker host, not port 80 as in simple mode, port 81. Likewise, port number 443, which is the HTTPS port from the internet, to port number 444 on your Docker host instead of 443 in the case of simple mode. Okay, so we're going to do that right now. Let's take a slight detour. I am on my router page right here. Let's log in. There you go. So this is one of the dumbest routers. I really hate it, but it's what I have. Let's work with it. So if I go to now, where you find port forwarding obviously will depend on your router or your networking. So in this case here, you can see I have already set it up to forward port 80 from the internet to port 81 on this machine, and then port 443 again from the external internet side to port 444 on this machine. Both of these are wrong because if you remember, the IP address of my Docker host is 220. So let's just go ahead and delete that. And we're going to add two new rules right now. So we're going to use 220 for IP address. Port number, local port is 81, 81, 80, and oops, 80 and 80. and then protocol is TCP and enabled. Okay, so the way you do it might be slightly different. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so there you go. For now, HTTPS 220, local port is 444, 444, 443, and 443. Protocol would be TCP and enabled. So we're done. So I'm just going to scroll down and make sure that we have two rules: 80 on the internet site to 81, 443 to 444. So now the port forwarding is set. We're ready for traffic. So let's go back in here. Advanced mode is enabled. Great, we're ready. Now we do need a domain name for Traefik to work, and I don't think we set that. So let's go back. You will see a warning. If you go through the steps, it will error out. In fact, you know what? Let's just keep going so you can see the error. So preparation. I'm gonna prepare the Traefik environment right now. It says something right here that you will need a Cloudflare scoped DNS API token to proceed. So we're gonna need that. And what privileges are needed for that? We need zone read, and zone DNS edit privileges. I show this in my Traefik video, so go back and watch my Traefik video to get the Cloudflare DNS API token or create your own. I'm going to assume that you already have your scoped DNS API token, so let's proceed. And right there, you see the warning because hybrid mode is requirement is not met. Okay, so that is a requirement. So because if you remember in the prerequisites menu, we set the setup mode to local, but we need hybrid mode because we're going to start exposing apps to the internet. So we'll have to toggle this one. Now you can see that once I switch to hybrid mode, your domain checks says not done in red, because now that requirement that was optional before is the compulsory requirement right now. So we're going to do domain checks right now. This is where it's checking to see if the ports are free and are being forwarded from the internet. So if you do not do your port forwarding correctly, and if you do not set your Cloudflare records correctly, gray clouded, meaning you don't disable the proxy, then all of these things are going to error out, or some of these things are going to error out. You will of course see an error message that tells you what might be the potential problem. That's one nice thing about using Deployrr, that it gives you some suggestions anytime something is not working. In this case, all the domains passed successfully. So we're going to go back to the menu, and it should say that all the domain checks are now done. Now we're ready to get started with reverse proxy. So let's go in here and we're going to start preparing. Once again, Cloudflare DNS API token. We're going to start with the username for basic HTTP authentication. I'll put in Anand. You have a strong password recommendation. I'll just choose Anand for simplicity. Next, you will have to enter the Cloudflare DNS API token. I already have it in my notepad right here. Don't worry, I will delete this token right after we're done. So I'm going to paste that in here and press OK. And that's going to check if your token is in fact valid. And if it is valid, it's going to start creating all the files and folders that are required for Traefik to work. It's also checking if your ports are free, the ports that Traefik requires are free. Look at that. In just a minute or so, pretty much half of what's described in my Traefik guide is done. So the preparation part of it is done. The next step is to stage Traefik. We're ready for it, so let's just go for it right now. Once again, this is all automatic. All the preparation, everything is done. This is going to take a few minutes. Let's let Deployrr do its thing and come back and continue. It's going to start Traefik and see the progress and monitor and report back to you if something goes wrong. So let's just wait patiently. I'm going to stretch here because my neck is starting to hurt. It's already been nearly 2 hours of recording. Let's see how it goes. Okay, everything went through without any issues. So you can see that the validation succeeded and the certificates have been requested. Now Deploy will check to see if the staging certificates are present for traefik.simplehomelab.com. If it is, then we're ready to move on to production. Let's see if this step completes. It can just take a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds or so. Let's wait for it to complete. And there you go, everything is done. Here you can also see, once again, always read the messages that you do see on the screen. you might see a not secure warning when you try to open traefik.simplehomelab.com on your website because we are still using the staging certificate. In fact, if you have HSTS or something enabled, you won't even be able to open without a valid certificate. So we're not going to try to open it. We know it works. Let's move on to production and then we'll open the dashboard and test it. Okay, so let's hit OK and then go on to production. I'm going to hit production and we essentially do the same thing we did last time, which is wait until the whole process is done. It's going to take about 2, 3, 4 minutes. We'll come back and continue. And it's done. Notice something here. The process was exactly the same as staging. Most of the messages that you see here were exactly the same as staging, but you have something new, adding traffic to Deployrr dashboard. You know what? Now let's go back to our Deployrr dashboard. Where is it? So it's right here. So we're gonna go here and right here, traffic.simplehomelab.com, and it's running. You see it. That's great. Traefik is not here because it belongs to the other apps. That's why it's not here. So let's click on that and check. Voila, you have your basic authentication. I think I set it as Anand and Anand, and there you go. So I see all my information right here. The web external and internal entry points, the same way HTTPS external and internal entry points. So Traefik is set up and running. So if I click on this one, let's just verify the certificate as well. So certificate is valid and it is from Let's Encrypt, as you see here. So Traefik is now done. So let's go back in here. You see that production is running. Version 3.1.4 is running right now. So we are good with Traefik. We're ready to take that next step. But before we start installing additional apps, this would be a good time to go into the security menu and activate an advanced install an advanced security layer, authentication layer, for example, Authelia. That's what we're going to do here right now, Authelia. So let's get started with Authelia. This way, when we start adding more apps, we can put them behind Authelia. So let's start with Authelia. So we're gonna hit that and we're gonna be asked for some information here. Authelia username. I'm gonna just say Anand and a recommendation for password. I'm just gonna say Anand. It's just a test and a display name. I'm gonna say Anand. You cannot use a space because it will error out. So you will have to use an underscore. So watch out for that. I will just say Anand underscore SSB. And I need to provide an email. Email is not critical at all because we don't have an SMTP server that Authelia will use. So all the notifications from Authelia will be stored in a text file. If you watched my Authelia video, you would understand this process exactly as it works in the background. So if you want to know how to do all of this stuff with Authelia, go and watch my Authelia video. So for now, we're just going to say, a@a.com. It really does not matter. So let's click next and let Authelia do its magic. We'll sit back and wait for everything to be created. Actually, the magic is happening in Deployrr, not in Authelia. So let's wait for Deployrr to finish its magic and we'll continue. And there you go. Authelia is done, but we're not fully done yet. You do have some instructions. Always, once again, read through the closing messages that you see here. Authelia was added to the Deployrr dashboard, but that's not what's important. What's important here is the next steps to complete the Authelia setup process. So let's head over here and go over to Deployrr dashboard. You should already see Authelia right here. So let's click on that. That should take you here and Authelia login screen. I'm going to log in with my username and password that I just supplied. I do not, okay, though. So let's get out of that. You will first have to register your device. So let's click on registration and we're going to use a one-time password. So we clicked that already. Now what this does is that it creates a file on your system where the code is stored. So let's go over to my Docker folder here on the left and app data and Authelia. Here you see the notifications file. So we're going to click and open that one. And here, right here, you see the code, the OTP code. So we're going to copy that code out of this text file, go back in here, paste that code, verify ourselves, and now we're going to see we're ready to go to the next step, and we're going to see the QR code that we can use to register. So I'm going to register myself right now. Just give me a second. So let me scan this and save it. Now I did it. Now next I will type in my code 395426. And there you go. I'm done. Authelia is now ready to go. So if I go back to my Deployrr script, it's saying already running version 4.38.8. We are ready to go. While we're here, we'll also install Google OAuth. Okay, so Google OAuth does require some additional work that Deployrr cannot do. You will have to do this work on your Google Developers Console on your account. So read my written guide. You will see the link to that in just a bit, or you can follow my YouTube video on how to set up Google OAuth, and that will explain everything that you need to know to get your Google client ID and client secret. I'm going to assume that you already have it, and let's proceed right now. So first thing, it's going to ask you for your client ID. I've already copied that over in my Word file or notepad right here. Be sure to copy just the code, not, if you notice here there's a blank space right at the end, do not copy that. Make sure you copy only the the ID itself. So I think I copied that, so I'm going to paste that right here and press OK. Next, we're going to paste the client secret. We'll do this exact same thing. Copy that and paste it right here and press OK. Now here you will type in the email ID that you want to use to log in. So I'm going to type in my email. So this is the only email that will be allowed to log in and access the apps that are behind Google OAuth. So let's do that right now. Do you want to add additional emails? For now, this is the only user I want to have access to the apps. If you have other members in the house that you want to provide access to, you can add them. Right now, I'm going to say no, and this will set up Google OAuth in just a couple of minutes. We should be ready to go. As you can notice here, it creates all the middlewares, everything that's needed for Traefik to make Google OAuth work. I am really excited about this one as well. Authelia and Google OAuth, they can be a little bit tricky to set up, and Deployrr makes it really easy. Once again, it was added to your dashboard. So let's go over to our dashboard, make sure it's there right here. Look at that, even with nice icons and everything. So I hope you guys can see how much effort I put in to make all of these things happen automatically for you. So it also required a lot of thought, planning, sleepless nights, and everything. So I really, really hope you guys like it. So let's see how it works. So I'm going to click this link right now, and just to make sure that I'm able to log in, I clicked and I'm able to log in. Obviously, it's a blank screen right now because there's no apps behind that right now. So let's go back and press enter. We are back on the security menu. So you can see that both Authelia and Google Auth are running. We're done with the security part. Now you can see that there's a manage auth option. You can use this to change the authentication mode for apps at any point, and this would actually be a good time to do it. So let's do that right now. So if I click on that, let's see what happens. You will see some warning messages that this only works with apps that were installed using Deployrr itself, or apps that you installed yourself, but following the exact same folder structures and middlewares and etc. using my guide. So if you do that, it'll work. So for now, let's go on. It says that Traefik dashboard right now is using the basic authentication, as you can see, but I can enable Authelia or I can enable Google OAuth, both of which we just installed. If you didn't have those, you would not see these options right here. So we can pick any authentication right here. So I'm going to pick Authelia because I'm already logged into Google OAuth. So if I visit Traefik dashboard, you will not even see the Google login screen because I'm already logged into my Google Chrome. So just so you can see that there's an authentication layer, I wanted to pick Authelia. So you can see the Deployrr automatically recreates Traefik with the new authentication layer on top. So let's wait for this to complete and then we'll continue. And that's it. It was done. So if I press OK, I'm back. So let's test it out. So if I go back in here, go to Traefik dashboard and refresh it, I think I won't be asked for to log in again, because if you remember, we already registered with Authelia right here. So I'm already logged in. So if I refresh, it's not, oh, well, it does ask me. So Anand, and Anand was the username and password. We should be able to type in our OTP code right now. And first, I'll exit out of this one. 578534. Okay, there you go. So now our Traefik dashboard is protected with Authelia. You can do exactly the same with all the other apps. So let's go back to our security menu. We're done with the security menu. We're ready to continue with more apps. So let's go into apps and now install additional apps. Now the way the apps will be installed will be slightly different compared to the other ones. Here you can see Adminer and Baikal, which we installed, both of which are running right now, but they're running locally because when we installed them, we didn't have Traefik, so they're not exposed to the internet. We'll see how to put those behind Traefik in just a little bit. For now, let's go ahead and install other apps. So let's install Airsonic Advanced right now. There are some requirements for each of these apps. So when you hit the button and it doesn't install, you will see an error message to see what requirements were not met. For example, you know what? Let's do that right now. In fact, I'm going to pick an app that requires, let's see here, MariaDB. So guacamole, I'm going to hit that, but it's not going to work because we need some other stuff. So right there, MariaDB should be installed and running before you run guacamole. So as you can see, I tried to build in ways to give you constructive feedback so you're not lost when you go through Deployrr. So no, we know that we'll have to go back and install MariaDB. So while we're there, actually, why don't we do that right now? So let's go down and we install MariaDB. Where is it? There you go. You were asked for a password. You know what? I don't care right now, so I'm just going to accept the password that it gave me. So let me do that. MariaDB should be installed in just 1 minute or so. Port number, the default MariaDB port number is 3306. It's a standard port, so I'm just going to leave it at that. So let's put that and wait for Deployrr to finish installing MariaDB. That actually went by real fast. As you can see here, MariaDB was also added to the Deployrr dashboard. So let's go back to Deployrr dashboard and see if it actually shows up and where it shows up. You can see it shows up on the right side, not on the local or the remote, just because MariaDB does not have a web interface. So it automatically goes to that others bucket right there. If it did have a web interface, you would see them, see the app in the apps local or apps remote. So MariaDB installed and running. So now we should be able to install Guacamole, but I'm not going to do that right now. Let's go back to our original plan of installing Airsonic Advanced, but here you can see that it's running. Now, we don't need to put MariaDB behind Traefik, so we weren't asked for that question. In the case of Airsonic Advanced, that's going to be different. Let's see here. Airsonic Advanced does require a media folder. We already set our media folder, so now it should work without any issues. But if you didn't set your media folder, you will see a warning. In this case, no, there's no warning, so let's keep going. Setting the required folders, and it's also activating the media folders. If you remember, I set 2 media folders. Those 2 media folders are activated. 4040 is the Airsonic port, and it's free and available, so I'm just going to leave it be. Let's wait for it to finish. And it's creating the container. Now we're going to be asked some questions once Airsonic Advanced starts. Now it's been added to Deployrr dashboard. So if we go to Deployrr dashboard, but we're not done with the installation part here. This is what is different from before. So if I go here, I do notice Airsonic Advanced, it's running. And in fact, I can click on this and it should open Airsonic Advanced in a new window. Locally, it's installed, but Deployrr, I made it smart enough to recognize when Traefik is running, then offer you the option to put Airsonic of Advanced behind Traefik. Now you can just press yes or Y, and Airsonic Advanced should be added behind Traefik. So you can use a really nice domain name to access it. So let's call it Airsonic and then Press OK. This will be the subdomain. Press OK. Now it's the second question. Do you want it with what authentication method? Let's just pick Google OAuth right now because we picked Authelia previously. Now the third question, because we chose advanced for the exposure mode, we have the option to expose Airsonic Advanced both internally, externally, internal only, or external only using this domain name. It doesn't matter how you want to restrict the app, but this is how you will access the app using this subdomain right here. We can put it, let's say, internal right now. So let's just see what happens because I do want to show you other features. Then Deploy will test to see if the app is reachable and then start putting it behind um, Traefik. You can see right now the closing messages are slightly different. In this case, notice also that you are given the default username and password for Airsonic Advanced. Once again, read the closing messages more carefully, and you have now two URLs to access Airsonic. One is the local IP and port that we already saw. Voila, right here, you can see on the remote side now you have Airsonic Advanced with the Traefik, airsonic.simplehomelab.com domain name using Traefik reverse proxy. Now, this is all a little bit messed up because we installed Deployrr dashboard later on. But if you had installed Deployrr dashboard at the beginning, right after socket proxy, as I recommended earlier in this video, these icons will be really nicely aligned right next to each other if you enabled both local and remote. Okay, so there you go. So this dashboard is getting populated. Now you can see that in the apps list, Airsonic Advanced is listed slightly differently. It says it's exposed internal only, really nice information to know. And then it says it has Google or OAuth as the authentication layer, also a good piece of information to know. Now let's move on, install one or two more apps, and let's see how it goes. Chromium, I have many different things. It's really hard to go and explain everything else. The key point to keep in mind is that if there's a requirement for something, you will see an error message pointing you at what is needed. Okay, so let's what else can I? Next, maybe let's install Jellyfin. So I'm gonna find Jellyfin. It's right here. So let's install Jellyfin. Again, a media folder is a requirement here. We already said it. So Jellyfin is being added. I want to point out something right here. Just a second here. Adding GPU device for hardware transcoding. Remember, we set the GPU device in earlier in this video. If you didn't do that, that step will not happen. So Jellyfin port is 8096. That's a default port. Let's just leave it at that and continue. This will pull Jellyfin and it should be available in just a few minutes. And likewise, as before, Jellyfin was already added to the Deployrr dashboard, but on the local site. Let's put it behind Traefik and press enter. Now we'll be asked for some additional questions. Let's wait for those questions to pop up. I'll just call it Jellyfin. I want to use no authentication this time. Let's see what happens. So I'll expose it both internally and externally. So I will put it on both. So let's see what happens now. The app is reachable, and voila. So this time again you are provided with two different URLs to access. So if I go to Deployrr dashboard, I'm going to see local Jellyfin and then remote Jellyfin. It's like magic. As and when you install an app, they get installed, they appear on your Deployrr dashboard. We will delete an app and you will see that that's going to disappear from the Deployrr dashboard. It's really late at night right now. I'm really struggling to find my words. It's 12:30 a.m. in the morning already. So excuse my stutters and everything. My mouth is dry. It's 2.5 hours of recording already. So hang in there. We're almost there. Okay, so let's go back now. So we have a few apps that are installed. So if I scroll down the apps list, you are going to see Jellyfin, but notice that no auth is in red. So I gave it some thought to highlight some of the issues that you might have if you accidentally have no auth on some app. It just shows up here, so you know right off the bat. Okay, so we're ready. we're done with that one. I'm not going to go through the rest of the apps. I think you get the point. You can easily install apps going through one at a time. It even shows you at the top you have 10 apps installed out of the 76 supported apps right now. Okay, so now that we have some apps installed, there are some things that we need to fix. First, we installed Adminer before we installed Traefik. So let's see how to put Adminer behind Traefik. Okay, so we know, if you remember, Adminer is on port 8081. If you don't remember, you can always go back to the awesome Deployrr dashboard and see Adminer is on this URL right here. Okay, so let's go to reverse proxy menu right now, and there is a very nice fancy feature. It's called Traefikify, and you can Traefikify Adminer. Right now, two apps are already behind Traefik as it shows because we installed two apps and we put them behind Traefik. So let's put Adminer manually behind Traefik. I'm going to say yes and proceed. We should be asked for a question. So enter a name for the app. I'm going to call it Adminer, and a subdomain for the app, I will just leave it at adminer. What is the IP address? By default, your Docker host is given. You can go back to your Deployrr dashboard. This is the URL that we're using, so it's the same IP. And what protocol is the app available on? Once again, HTTP. You can see it right there. We'll leave it there. And 8096 is the port. Well, we're not doing Jellyfin. We're doing, once again, it's 12:30 a.m. in the morning, so we're doing this one, but still everything else is the same. The port is 8081, so I'm going to fix it to 8081 and then say okay. Once again, you will have to pick the authentication method. Right now, maybe I will pick basic auth. You know what? So, and then I'll put it externally. Okay, so now this is being installed, checked, exactly the same steps that you might see before. And now let's go back and see if this one appears on Deployrr dashboard. I don't think it does. I haven't added that feature yet, but I will at some point make it so that when you add external apps, they also appear here some way. Once again, one more reason to have the Deployrr dashboard going first before you install anything else. So I highly recommend that workflow if you want your dashboard to look nice and everything. So you could still go into your Docker folder, app data folder, and let's go to Deployrr dashboard and configuration right here. And you have the services YAML file, edit that, and it's open right here. Here you see all the configurations that were already added. We don't have Airsonic or Adminer, so we're going to copy this part right here and we're gonna place it under remote. That's where it's missing, right? So let's place it right under the last option, not here. Okay, if you're going to edit this file, be extremely careful. If you break some of the indentation and spacing, then automatic Deployrr dashboard building will not work anymore. So I'm showing it here, but use caution when you edit this. It goes right here, right below the other app. So adminer start. So everything else right here, you can customize it. So HTTPS, I'm going to call this adminer.simplehomelab.com. Description, it's just, I'm going to copy the exact same thing and paste it just like the other apps. You can use the other apps as the template and do this. The icon remains the same, adminer. The server here remains the same. You don't need to mess with it. You can see, in fact, for Jellyfin how it's done. Container name is adminer. You don't really need to do anything. Let's say I want to show the stats. I can turn this to true and then save it. Now, if I save this and then head over to Deployrr dashboard, and voila, right now I see adminer on the remote side of the Deployrr dashboard, and I turned on stats, so you're able to see the stats right here. If you don't see the stats, you can always click on this healthy icon or whatever that's displayed over there, and that will show you the stats for that container as well. So we saw Traefikify, that's done. One more feature that we haven't seen for reverse proxy is the manage exposure part. So let's do that right now. You can see that there's one app that's internal, one app that's external, and one that's both. Let's take the internal app and make it external right now. Let's see how to do that. Proceed to do that. Adminer is now external. This is not what we want to change, so I'm going to skip. Airsonic is internal only. I want to make it external, so right now I'm going to scroll down and pick external for this one. I don't want any changes with Jellyfin, so I'll skip that one. There you go. The changes have now been made. So if I press enter and go back, and there you go, internal is 0, external is 2, and you have both. Now, unfortunately, I cannot test the exposure in my environment because, as I said at the beginning of this video or somewhere in there, my router is not a good router. It's an ISP provided router. I am in the process of setting up OpenSense. So hairpinning, and I cannot use DNS, local DNS from AdGuard Home or Pi-hole or anything like that. So unfortunately, I cannot test internal versus external. All my apps will be treated as external because all traffic, even the ones that are internal, will leave my house environment, go to the ISP DNS server and come back in. So there's no way for me to test it because my router is not good. So in your case, if you have a good one, look into hairpinning or install Pi-hole or AdGuard Home, and then you can have DNS rewrite rules that will keep all the traffic that originates from inside your home network, so it won't leave the house and come back in. Okay, so I can test that. The last feature I want to touch on here is the domain pass-through. As I said in the beginning of this video, one of the new features in version 5 is that now you can install apps in local mode, and you can have a main Traefik instance in another Docker host. If you do that, or if you choose to have a second Traefik instance on that other Docker host, then you can pass through a domain from this machine into that other machine. Just pick this option, answer some questions, and it will forward all the requests that come in for this domain to this other Docker host. Obviously, you will have to give the IP address of that host and all of that, but it's very simple to do so. Okay, the other Traefik question that I would like to answer before we move forward is that people ask, okay, this is one domain, how do I add another domain? Today, Deployrr does not support multiple domains, but you can still do it manually. So if I go into my Docker folder and Compose folder and go all the way in and open Traefik and edit it, right here are the domain names that are listed. As you can see here, it already says um, domain name underscore 111 DNS resolver, all of that stuff. So what we have to do is basically just copy this whole thing right here and paste it down. Okay, and then change this to domain name 2, and then this one becomes 1 and 1. Likewise, we'll have to do it here as well. Let's copy this, then go over to the end, paste it, and this becomes 2 and 2 and 2. Oh no, 1 and 1. Okay, so that's done. So now we need to define this domain so we can edit the .env file and add this second domain. Okay, where is the env file? If you go into a Docker folder, there is the env file. Right now, I can't edit it, open it and edit it. I will have to exit the script, so maybe I will do that right now. So if I exit it out and go to Docker folder and do an ls or ls-al, I will see the .env file. I'm going to say nano.env. Oh, I need to use sudo nano.env. Here's all my stuff. Okay, all the stuff that Deployrr also created. So anytime you want to change ports of apps or things like that, you can come in here, but please don't do it because it will break Deployrr dashboard, at least with changing the ports. Okay, so here I will have to define domain name underscore 2, and I will call this, I don't know, domain2.com, and save it and exit. So we've defined that. Now let's go back and edit our compose file again and see how to put it behind the second domain. Now what you do is you can go down all the way down here where it says traffic.simplehomelab.com is where the Traefik dashboard is available, and you want to make it available behind the second domain. You can just choose that and change it to 2. And now when you restart Traefik, it's going to be available on the second domain. If you want to make the dashboard or the app available on both domains, you can do like you can copy basically the whole thing and say or, which is 2 pipe symbols, and then copy this whole thing and then change it to 1. And now save it and recreate Traefik, and you're going to have Traefik available on both domain 1 and domain 2. So right now I'm not going to save this one. I'm just going to remove all the changes I made because I don't want any errors. So I will change it because I mentioned recreate. Oh, I just noticed this alignment is out of whack, so I need to fix it. So when you do it, make sure you have the right alignment. I'm going to delete all of this stuff and save this Traefik file. Okay, now I did mention recreate, so let's see some of the other features. Deployrr, let me restart Deployrr, and there you go. I'm done with Deployrr. So we are done with apps. We saw how to install the apps. We saw how to manage a lot of different things. Now, if you go into tools right now, tools has many awesome features as well. One is Stack Manager. So I could go into Stack Manager. I can up my whole stack. I can down my whole stack. I can recreate, pull the updates and recreate. So if you want to update your Docker containers manually, the update option is the one for you. I could click on container status actually. So I'll just click on container status and it'll spit out a list of all the different containers, what version you're running, whether it's running or not, port numbers, and the IP addresses that they are available in. Really awesome. Okay, so the same way you could see service status, whether it's enabled or disabled. Another feature that we haven't seen yet, let's say you do not want certain app or you want to temporarily not have that app in your stack. You could go to disable and it'll show you all the list of running apps. I want to disable Baikal. I don't want to use it right now. I will just pick the number 4, which is that app, and press and continue, and Baikal will be shut down and disabled, but all the data will remain. Your Docker Compose will remain, everything will remain, but it won't work or it won't be running, and it won't start again when you come back up again. Okay, here you can see now that there's one disabled app. If you want to enable it back up again at any point, you can just go back in here and enable that app, and it will be added to the active apps list. We already saw how the delete works, but let's try it again because I want to see if the app is being removed from the Deployrr dashboard. So let's go to full delete, and we haven't made a backup yet, but I'm just going to skip it one more time. Don't worry about it. I will show it to you in the next step. Backup is skipped. Now what I want to do is I want to full delete. I'm going to pick an app that is available both um, on the local and the remote side. Let's pick Airsonic Advanced. I'm going to remove Airsonic Advanced, press 2 and press yes to confirm. Let's give it a few seconds. It should be removed in just any minute now. Okay, so everything is done. You also see some messages here that it's been removed from Deployrr dashboard, right? So let's go to Deployrr dashboard while we're waiting. Voila, it's gone from your Deployrr dashboard. So let's go back in here. It's done. So that's how Stack Manager works. There's a lot of awesome features here, so try it out. The next one is backup. This is really important. Now that we have a system that is working, it's a good time to make a backup. So let's do that right now. So when I go into backup, there are several options. Right now, there are 0 backups. The size is just 1 megabyte. It doesn't means there's no backup yet. You can do a backup. You can view backups. You can restore a backup, or you can delete backups as well. Now, if you decide to move your whole setup to a new system, then you can use the migration package, create and restore. So create the package here, move the package file to the new system, and then download Deployrr there, use the restore option, pick the file and restore it, and you will be back in business. So I think we're already over an hour and a half on this video, and I'm losing my voice. So I'm not going to show all of these features, but maybe we just do a backup just for the sake of it. Now, when you do a backup, all of the containers will be shut down. So it is a cold backup, which is the most reliable form of backup. So I would say I want to, yes, shut it down. So everything will be shut down. A backup will be made. Let's wait for it to happen and then continue. And as you can see, a backup was made successfully, and it says, or you're being asked if you want to restart the stack. I'm going to say yes, because I want to start all the containers back up again. So let's wait for that to be done, and we'll go back to the backup menu and see what we have there. Okay, all the containers have started. So let's go back in here. Now you can see that the number of backups is 1. And the backup size is just 2 megabytes. Now, when you have Plex and Jellyfin for several months, the sizes of those folders are going to grow, even Radar, and then you're going to see the size of the backups are going to increase a lot as you start adding more and more apps. So right now, this is done. So if I go to view backups, I should see one backup. Right there, I see one backup. But if I go to restore, also, all the running containers will be stopped. Do you wish to proceed? I'll just say yes. And here you can browse. On the left is the folder. On the right, you can see it automatically picks up the backup files from the backup folder that we defined in the very first step in the prerequisites. You can just use your tab key to navigate, and once it's selected, just press the space bar and you can see that it's selected. I'm going to confirm, and everything will be shut down. The whole stack will be restored. Obviously, in this case, the restoration is going to be exactly the same because I haven't made any changes since I made that backup. So let's wait for that process to finish, and then we should be done. Okay, you want to create a current backup before resting the selected backup, because if you make changes accidentally, you don't want to overwrite them, or you don't want to lose something significant. In this case, I'm just going to say no. So my previous backup was now restored, and this stack will be started back up again, and we are back in business. So with Deployrr, this is the convenience you get, that you can create your stack, start messing with stuff. Just make sure you take periodic backups, because if something goes wrong, then you can always restore the backup and go back to where you were before. Okay, so let's go back to the tools menu. You can see there are some permissions issues. So if there are some permissions that are not defined correctly, for example, I'll go to the Docker folder. I'm going to say sudo chmod 777. This is the wrong permission for an env file. We don't want it to be seen by everyone. Now, if I go back and start Deployrr, you're going to see a warning message, hopefully. So if I go to tools, there you go. Problem detected. There was one file that didn't have the right permission. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to automatically change it for us. Okay, so there, it's done. The permissions were changed. The message is gone. If you want to create a MariaDB database from right in Deployrr, you can do that if you decide to do so. I'm not going to do it right now. You just have to provide name, username, password, and all of that stuff. Okay, so let's skip that part. We're done with tools. Settings. Settings is not something that we covered, but it's really good to know, because let's say, first, let's turn off the intro message. Okay, so let's toggle this one off. I turned off the intro message. So now if I go back to the home screen, you can see that the intro message is gone. Now, this announcement that it's a beta, it's not, it's being pulled from the server, so that you cannot disable. Of course, you won't be bombarded with messages here. In this case, it's very important to communicate that this is still a beta, so that's why you see that message. Otherwise, you won't see anything here. So let's go back to settings. Then mode. Deployer mode is right now set to normal, which is, you can toggle it to make it expert mode. So right now expert mode is enabled. Use it at your own risk. What does this offer? Sometimes you have some advanced setup. Some people have advanced firewalls, so the straightforward port forwarding checks and all of that stuff don't work. If you have such a system, you can override some of the steps that fail with expert mode. especially when Traefik is being installed and it's doing some of those checks, the Cloudflare checks and the DNS checks and the port forwarding checks. They will stop. If one of those fails, the whole process stops. Now with export mode, you will have the option to override it, of course, only if you know that it's actually working. Okay, so you can do that. So for now, for most people, if you have good port forwarding enabled, it should work without issues. You can go into status to see what are all the things that has been done. Everything is recorded, so that's done. Now refresh is a good option. Sometimes Deployrr creates a cache in your system of different files. Sometimes we need to pull fresh files. If something is not working or you reach out to me for support, and I might come back and tell you, refresh your Deployrr instance, and then new files will be pulled and you will be ready to use all the new changes. Okay, reset will completely reset Deployrr, not your Docker stack, not your Docker composes files or Docker apps, none of that stuff, only Deployrr. You can reset it. And then you have the remove option to completely remove Deployrr from your system. So if you're done with it, you don't want it, you can just use this. Of course, it's not like it's installing thousands of files here and there and all of that stuff. You could also do it manually, but it's just a nice feature to have it there. Okay. All right. One last thing I want to show before we wrap up this really long tutorial is we already saw in the reverse proxy menu how to put an app behind Traefik using the Traefikify option. You can use the exact same option if you want to put an app that's not running on the system, but it's running in a different Docker host. You can use the exact same app to put that other app behind Traefik. Now, what about apps that you want to custom install? Or right now, Deployrr supports about 75, 76 apps. What do you do if you want to install an app that is not supported by Deployrr? How do you do it? Let's see how to do that. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to just jump back to Deployrr GitHub, or you could go to my GitHub, which is the Docker Traefik GitHub, but we're not going to do that right now. We'll just pick one of the other Docker Compose files. We'll just assume that this is something that you want to install. So let's say LiDAR, right? So let's say we want to install LiDAR. So we're just gonna copy this service file, head over to our Mobax term, go over to the compose folder and create a new file called lidar.yml. This is in my Traefik video or my Docker video. So you will see the link in the description below, or it should probably show up right now about somewhere here. So check it out. All of what I'm doing right here is explained in that video if you want to learn more. Okay, so we created this file. We're going to edit it. We copied the compose file from a GitHub. You can get your compose file from anywhere you want. So we pasted it here. You may or may not have the profiles file line depending on where you get it from. So we copied it from my GitHub. Let's just leave it like that. Customize everything that you want to customize here. In this case, let's say there is a variable LiDAR port. So you will have to add this variable manually. We do know you can define a media folder. In this case, I'm going to define just one media folder. We just have to make sure that this variable and this variable are defined in our .env file. And then we also have a downloads that are listed in our .env file, and that these variables are listed in our .env file as well. So we added this compose file. You've customized it. You've added all the missing environment variables, right? So in fact, I'm going to exit out here. I'm going to go into Docker folder. I'm going to say sudo nano.env. Let's see here. We have Docker there, we have the UID, we have the time zone, we have the downloads there, we have the media folder. The only thing that's missing is the LiDAR port. I'm going to call it LiDAR port as the variable was referred to in the file. I'm going to put 8686 was the port, I believe. So I'm going to save that, exit out. So that is done. Now you have to call that compose file in your master Docker compose file. So I open the master Docker compose file that Deployrr created for me right here, and go all the way down here and copy one of those lines Again, this is explained in my Docker video. Check it out. And then I'm going to change this to LiDAR. Oh, with the right case, LiDAR. So we saved it. Now, if I go back to my command line right here and I do a DC up, which is Docker Compose up. Why am I using DC up? Because remember that I reinstalled the bash aliases from the Docker menu of Deployrr. So this is how it simplifies. So let's, you know what, let's clear the screen so you're not seeing all the mess. So now if I use DC up, it should pull LiDAR if there are no any errors. There you go. So now LiDAR is being pulled and installed. Let's wait for it to be done. LiDAR is done. Unfortunately, if you install the app this way, it does not get added to Deployrr dashboard, at least at this point. As you can see, you don't see LiDAR here. So you can edit the services.yaml file, as I showed you before in this video, and add LiDAR for local and remote if you prefer. So now one thing that you could also do is put LiDAR behind Traefik. For that, we can use the Traefikify option. We know the port, we know the host, we know everything about it. So we're going to go down here and we are going to rerun Deployrr. Go to the proxy option, Traefikify, proceed, and let's wait for it to complete, do some checks. You should see it now. I'm going to call this LiDAR and the domain is going to be LiDAR. IP is the same, it's HTTP. The port number is 8686. So I'm going to put that in here. I'll put it behind Authelia, make it available externally and internally. And now we've added an app that we installed manually behind Traefik. Now, if I go to my Deployrr dashboard, when you add an external option using Traefikify, I will, of course, at some point add in a feature where it also adds this URL into your Deployrr dashboard. It's not done yet, but it's coming for sure. Okay, so that was it. I think we almost went 2 hours in this video. I am really tired. You can see my eyes are droopy already. It's going to be nearly 1 a.m. at night, but I hope that this video was useful for you guys to see how Deployrr works in detail. As always, if you have any trouble, just reach out to me or others on the Discord server. We will try to help you out as best as we can. If I missed something, or if you have further questions, leave a comment below and I will get back to you. Please do not forget, if you're interested in Deployrr, there is a code right now, which you will see right here, that you can use to get 15% off and also get reimbursed. One winner in October, one winner in November, and you can get Deployrr for free. If you like Deployrr and would like to get into the raffle to get a free Deployrr license, then subscribe to my channel, leave a comment below. I will pick 2 winners each month, October and November, and give you free licenses. I hope this video was helpful. I will see you in my next video. Go Geek Army.